Hi, I'm Sam, and behind me you can see there is a GTC4 Lusso. Now this is actually my Lusso. I have sold my 812 Superfast, and I thought it was probably time we had a little look around this car, go for a drive. I'll give you my thoughts on the 812 from my ownership and why I changed, and then at some other time I'll do my thoughts after I've driven this car a bit more. So let's have a look around the car. So let's have a look around the Lusso. In spec, it's very similar to my 812 TDF Blue, except that had black wheels, as I'm sure some of you remember. This has silver wheels. I sort of did a jokey Instagram post about how I'd changed the wheels on the 812, and actually it was this car. Now, it took me a little bit of time to warm up to the sort of shape of the GTC4 Lusso and the FF before it, but I really like it now. I think they are really seriously cool. As Ferraris go, pretty practical. Let's have a little look inside. And in the interior we have Koyo and a various bunch of bits. So, upgraded JBL sound system. This car's got Apple CarPlay, all that stuff. We've got the carbon steering wheel, passenger display, which is completely pointless, and the rear seats, which two adults can fit in pretty comfortably. These front seats are the fully electric seats with heating and cooling, adjustable in many ways, really comfy. If we have a little look, buttons under there, in the boot, which is obviously a plus point of the GTC4 Lusso, 450 litres back here. We've got the car's specification on a plate up there in case people fancy changing it. Someone can always check. These seats do go down, and this does come out to give you a bit more space. Not tons more, but you can get quite a lot in here. Obviously, another important bit. There's the front. And there's that massive V12. Ooh la la. What a thing. It takes up so much space. It gives these V12 Ferraris their massive bonnets. But it is interesting to see how far back it is when you compare to the front of the car. Fire up. Okay, let's talk about the 812. I had that car for a couple of months. I did a couple thousand miles. I think I did 3,000 miles in it. At the time I bought the car, I thought it was going to keep it for a really long time. I wanted to try out a V12 Ferrari, the 812s at the time. Now, this is all take this with a pinch of salt, but they seemed like reasonable value versus F12s, which is what I was looking at for a long time. I thought F12s had got to a good price point, but then considering I was planning on keeping the car for a long time, and then the running costs and having a warranty and stuff, it seemed like you could get quite a good price on an 812 at the time. Since I bought the car, the prices then went up, which is part of this whole situation. So I got the car, I did a trip up to Scotland and drove around with my wife, cruised around, filled it full of luggage, did a lot of stuff. It was wet most of the time. On the way back, we stopped in the Lake District and drove around there, went for some walks and whatnot. And throughout all of that usage of the car, it was great in terms of luggage space. You can fit so much luggage in those cars versus other GT cars of that ilk, which is brilliant. For two people, it was brilliant. The problem I started to come into, and I then started using the car quite a lot, just day to day, realised very quickly that I was going to be putting an insane amount of miles on it, and the value would probably tank. You start to think at that point, you go, okay, maybe if I was doing 5,000 miles a year, this would be okay. I'd done 3,000 miles or 2,500 miles, I think, in 3 weeks. and that's not massively sustainable unless you are keeping the car forever. But one of the things I started to notice was how big the car was, and how actually using it day to day was okay, but driving around the Lake District, for example, was not massively fun because the roads are really small. You're obviously aware of, like, you don't want to damage it. And then coming to the performance is nuts. The engine in that car, and I can only imagine what the Competizione model is going to be like, but the engine in the 812 is absolutely bonkers. Like, any gear in the wet, which I did a lot of my driving in the wet, I don't think you were really safe until about 5th gear from sort of losing traction at normal speeds at sort of like 50, 60 miles an hour. And what happens is you're driving along, and then if you're in a higher gear, it gets to that point where the big chunk of torque comes in, you start to work the rears a little bit, and then you're in 4th, not 2nd, and your wheels spin up very quickly to 100 miles an hour or 120 miles an hour, the wheels, and things get a bit interesting. The traction control systems are amazing, but I really felt like I couldn't push on in that car very much because you're always so aware that you can light up the rears in like any situation if you're in the right gear, which is fun, but a bit interesting. If the car was a bit different, I think I would be all about that. But it was fun. I enjoyed it, but it felt like when you drive an 812, people can disagree with me whatsoever, but my opinion, it's a bit like driving a sort of boat, because you've got this massive bonnet that just goes off there, and then the front's the steering is definitely better than the F12, but you're still sort of turning this thing up there and you're navigating this really large, really fast vehicle that I felt like you're kind of along for the ride. You're not truly connected to it, and it's not bristling with feel everywhere. It's just unbelievably powerful, but at the same time really heavy and really large. And driving it quick was more of like an experience, I would say, than a really fun thing for me anyway. It just had so much power that to really put your foot down, and you could put your foot down in a second, like it will take it, but you're going like silly speeds so quickly. It's the sort of thing you hear from everyone nowadays, isn't it, really? So I was enjoying the car. I was enjoying the noise as a thing to sort of mooch around in. Oh, like what a thing. But started with the back of my mind, started going, okay, maybe I'm not going to keep this forever. Maybe this is not the forever car. In the meantime, we're in this crazy market where everything's worth loads of money, and the on paper price of my car had jumped up 25k from what I paid for it. And I was sort of assuming I was going to lose a lot of money in my ownership in that car. And I was jumping in and doing a little bit of a leap to see, yeah, let's go for it, you know. When I found out there was two things that happened at the same time. One, I found out I was having a kid, so coming soon. That's why there's going to be a gap in the podcast for 2 months, baby's arriving. Found out I was going to have a kid, and I have all of these 2-seater sports cars, and then the price going up. So are we as a family going to be driving around in an 812? Unlikely. There's 3 of us and there's 2 seats, so that is not going to happen so much. Price has then gone up, so I start phoning some people, making sort of some calls, seeing what's what, and it turned out I was talking to a friend of mine who had this car that he was thinking of selling because of the same reason. He didn't use it so much and the values had gone up. He thought, you know what, this might be a good time to sell. So we did a deal on this car. So I got this car, I'd say a good price, and I gave my 812 to Romans to sell. It all needed to be done quite quickly, so I didn't have too much time to sort of mess around with selling. So my car went to Romans and they bought it off me. So I went from an 812 into a GTC4 Lusso that in a sort of nutshell was why it's selling. I didn't get as much out of it as I do in something like my GT3 RS. It didn't give me that impression. It was no longer practical enough for the two of us to go away on long trips, which was one of the main reasons we bought it. So we had a GT car, kind of a nice car that we could cruise around in together, and also a bit silly. This came up and I thought, you know what? There's going to be three of us. We've got 4 seats. Maybe this is going to be the option. It also enables me to take the value of this was less than the 812, so I could take a bit of money out of this possible Ferrari gamble that I've been going down on. And then there was a few other things. This car has a much nicer spec. Like, they're very similar spec-wise from the exterior, TDF blue, Koya interior, but this car had a few more features that I was wanting on my 812. It's got some that I don't, but it was a demo car, and this has the adaptive cruise control system. It's a 2019 car, which not a lot of Lussos have adaptive cruise control. This was a dealer demo, so it was spec'd quite highly. And it also has the uprated sound system. And the uprated sound system in this, I've not driven an 812 with it, but the difference in this is massive. It sounds bloody amazing. I love cranking the tunes in this car. So that in a nutshell is why the 812's gone. How do I feel overall about large, fast, modern cars? This was me going, should I get a modern paddle fast car? Because for me, things like 720S or something, I think they're unbelievable performance, but I personally don't get much out of a car like that. So I thought, let's try something, tick the V12 box. And currently we've got this. I'm very much enjoying it. It's still big, but it's pretty cool. But the 800 horsepower, 900 horsepower, 1000 horsepower, really heavy, I think is not for me. So bye-bye 812. Hello Lusso. Great swap. I'm very happy with it. But that's pretty much it. And there we go. That is it. Current garage setup, not too bad, I would say. Peugeot E208 going strong. And there's another car coming this week. Something a little bit more practical. Although, that is surprisingly practical. See you guys in the next video. And if you haven't already, tune in to my podcast, Car Chat Podcast.